Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. This is your host, PA. It is September 10th, 2024. The time now is 9:01 p.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday. Hope everybody had a great day. We're going to continue on our John St. Clair patents. If you haven't seen the previous live stream, I suggest you do so. It's regarding generating a wormhole, a patent on a device that can generate a wormhole. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a patent that states that you can have a full body teleportation system. And we're going to go through what the patent, what the information is, and what it does. So let's get started. So this is a patent by John St. Clair, or John Quincy St. Clair. This was back in 2006. And it talks about a pulsed gravitational wave wormhole generator system that teleports a human being through hyperspace from one location to another. Excuse me. They have sketches regarding how it's supposed to work or what it looks like when it's working. It's not on the screen because it's just a sketch, but it's a person passing through a particular area, an area that's, I guess, where the wormhole is created, and how they end up on the other side of the location. And then they show you a human body with the chakras, and your chakras are portals that you can activate. Okay, so we're going to get into let's see here. Actually, let me put it on the screen real quick, so it'll be easier for you guys to see. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, so this is part of the device. I don't know what it's, I guess it's like a device you stand on. It's what it looks like. And then it has copper, I believe, in the middle of the device. And somehow this device is turned on, and it's supposed to be able to teleport you to whatever location, I guess I don't know how they figure this out, but it's supposed to teleport you to another location. And then here's another, let me make it bigger. Here's another part of the explanation. It shows an airplane, it shows a person on one side of a field, and then the device in the middle, I guess. Can't really see it that well. And then it's supposed to teleport you from one side of the field to the other. And then it explains, I guess, more information on part of some of the devices. Gives you measurements. And then here's a figure showing you the chakras, how your chakras become portals or wormholes on their own. And I know this to be true. I'll get into a story later on how this is actually a real thing. And again, it shows you what the chakras, the part of the body where you can generate the portals or the wormhole through the chakras. More sketches. Shows you an airplane and how you can do the same thing for an object. Here's another, I really don't understand this part, but I guess has something to do with the pillars. And many of you are going to notice that the pillars are very familiar. If you've heard about Andrew Basiago, he supposedly was in a project when he was a young kid. His father was involved in aerospace and the military. And he stated that he was put into the project as a 5-year-old with other children and teenagers into a secret program where they created this device that you can teleport through. And this was back, I believe it was back in the 50s and 60s. And he stated that his father was part of this project. And it was, I believe, I want to say somewhere either in New York or Long Island. And the device that the sketch that's I'm going to show you right now looks exactly what he described. Okay, this is another part of that. This is another part of the device, but this is the part that I want to show you. So the device looked like this. He said there was two pillars when he was a kid, when he teleported. He said there was two pillars, two things in a room like this, and it would generate some type of wave field. And him and his father, once it generated this wave field, it would turn, it would generate some type of like translucent, what he called watery wave in between the two pillars. And that was the portal or the wormhole. And he stated that him and his father went through this portal. And I forgot where this was. I think he might have said, if I remember correctly, Los Alamos was the lab that they went in or that they came out through. I forgot if it was they went through that portal or they came out through there. And these were the devices that were there. These two pillar things, it would generate some type of field, and then it would look like some type of watery, translucent, vibrational field, and then they will walk through it and will end up somewhere else in the United States. And here's another sketch showing you, I guess, the waves that it creates. Here's another sketch. The two pillars, devices generating the wave. And then I don't know what the middle part here, the GH is. I have to look into that. So let's get started on what it actually, how the device actually works. So the brief summary of the invention. This invention is a system that teleports a human being through hyperspace from one location to another using pulsed gravitational wave traveling through hyperspace. The background of the invention, the basis of this invention is an event referring to occurring, figure 1, occurring on May 2nd, 2004, in which the inventor himself personally experienced a full body teleportation while walking to the bus stop. A, along a road, B, that runs perpendicular to the nearby commercial airport runways where planes are landing. There is a wide iron grating, D, for water drainage that crosses the road at the center of the bus stop. The grating width is such that one has to make a concerted effort to jump across it in order to get from one side to the other. Approximately 50 meters from the iron grating, he felt a vertical wave, and similar to a flag waving in the breeze, traveling down the street towards the bus stop. The wave velocity was about 1 meter per second, which was slightly faster than his walking speed. In the next instant, he found himself down the street near the corner of the next block. Now, when he's mentioning this, it reminds me of all the stories that we heard about the Bermuda Triangle, where people are flying and all of a sudden they see this vortex or wormhole or portal of clouds. And instead of their trip being, let's say, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours into the Caribbean or wherever they're going in the South area, South Florida, they end up only traveling about 15 minutes, or they end up taking longer and traveling way far into the Atlantic. And this is where we hear that all the planes that disappeared, that had problems with their instrument. This reminds me of that, what he's stating here. He's walking to the bus stop. There's an energy wave that was created, and he ends up at the bus stop a lot sooner than walking. So the wave velocity was about 1 meter per second, which was slightly faster than his walking speed. In the next instance, he, sketch G, found himself down the street near the corner of the next block. Realizing that he had passed the bus stop, he turned around to see the iron grating approximately 50 meters up the street in back of him. Because there was no recollection of having jumped across the iron grating, nor of having passed to the bus stop's yellow marker line, he realized that he had been teleported a distance of 100 meters while moving along with the traveling wave. It was obvious that the wave was pulsed because the front edge overtook the inventor and moved with him momentarily, and then the back edge of the wave left him as it moved on down the street. While contemplating this sequence of events, he then looked up and saw, in a span of a few seconds, a twin turboprop airplane, which is a C sketch, in the distance, crossing above the road while making a shallow descent in order to land at the airport. It took a number of days in order to understand this sequence of events. The explanation involves knowledge of wide range of subjects such as gravitation physics, hyperspace physics, wormhole electromagnetic theory, and experimentation quantum physics, and the nature of the human energy field. It is obvious from the above scenario that the airplane momentarily crossing perpendicular to the road generates the aforementioned pulse because the airplane has an engine on each wing. There are two propellers which conceivably are rotating out of phase with each other. That is, the blade of one propeller could be pointing up, and the equivalent blade on the other engine could be pointing in a slightly different direction. Notice that the tip of the blade traces out a helix as the plane is landing. In gravitation physics, referring to figure 2, it is known that two masses of mass m1 and m2, which is the AB sketch, attached by lever arms slightly offset by an angle of 80, I believe it says 80, along the radial direction to the rotating shaft, will produce a gravitational wave which traveling perpendicular to the shaft. The mass and wave are referred to as the source and receptor, respectively. Referring to a side view looking along the shaft, the product of the mass m times the angular acceleration is a constant such that m1a1 is equal to m2a2. The distance between the masses is length L, which makes an angle of 0 with the horizontal axis. The difference in time of travel to the receptor gives rise to a difference in phase equal to the angular velocity of the rotating shaft times. And that would be the length times the cosine of the angle. And then it gets into, the mathematical equations. Even though the turboprop airplane engines have a high rotational speed and a large separation distance between masses, the gravitational wave which is produced is small and not noticed. The problem is that the gravitational constant, g, in this dimension has such a small value equal to the speed of light, c, which is squared divided by the linear mass of the universe. On the other hand, a gravitational wave traveling in hyperspace would be magnified enormously due to the face that the linear mass is so small. The magnitude of the gravitational constant in hyperspace can be estimated in the following manner. At the beginning of the 20th century, a man's parents were dying of tuberculosis. With their permission, he placed them and their beds on a weighing scales. When each one passed away, each scaled registered a drop in mass equal to 0.071 kilograms. This is the mass of the hyperspace energy being, which resides in the physical body. Because hyperspace is so co-dimensional with our dimension, the energy being, that would be us, when he says energy being, that's us, interpenetrates the body and controls its movement. Then he's referring to figure 4. A human being has 7 vortices. Well, I think we have more because the chakras go all the way even above the head because of the our human magnetic field, I guess you can call it, our human field, generating field. So the human being has 7 vortices, which are aligned along the center line of the body. Each vortex is actually a co-gravitational field K, which causes a pendulum placed in the field to spin in circles. This is why Hindus and Buddhists and people that meditate, they're always trying to quote unquote align the chakras, right? And this is why you hear, excuse me, you hear teachers and practitioners talk about how their chakras are blocked. So the human being has 7 vortices which are aligned along the center of the body. Each vortex is actually a co-gravitational field which causes a pendulum placed in the field to spin in circles. For this reason, the K field has units of inverse seconds similar to the angular velocity. The vortex transports energy from our dimension to the energy being located in hyperspace. The gravitational field G and the co-gravitational field K are equivalent gravitationally to the electric E field and the magnetic B field found in electromagnetism. The equivalent gravitational solution to an electromagnetic problem can be obtained by substituting the following gravitational constants for the electromagnetic constants. And then it gets into the electromagnetic. You have Q, which is charge, P, which is volume, charge density, surface, charge density, line, charge density, convection, current density. And then it gets into mass, volume of mass density, surface of mass density, line mass density, and mass current density. And then it gets into the electric field, the magnetic field, the permittivity of space, the permeability of space, the gravitational field, the co-gravitational field, and the gravitational constant. Let me see if I skipped. No, constants. Okay. So referring to figure 5, each vortex is connected through the pineal gland. Okay, so now we're getting into the what the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, this is why they're the pineal gland, the eye of Ra, or the I guess what you would call it, the depictions of the pineal gland with the eye. This is the main part. This, and again, the pineal gland, I believe, has crystals. And if you look at into computers, and if you look into certain devices, every computer chip has a crystal. They have crystals. They can't operate the way they're operating today if they didn't have those crystals. Each vortex is connected through the pineal gland by light cords to a separate hyperspace quantum well, having its own frequency and dimension. The reason for this separation is that the conical spiritual eye attached to a vortex B has to have its own energy structure, which is different from vortex A, which is connected to the quantum energy field, in which the mental processes are developed. And another thing regarding this, when people say that your chakras are blocked, when this happens to people, which is probably the majority of the populations of the world, at least 70% of the world is having issues with the energy field. Supposedly, this causes a lot of sickness, and you develop a lot of sickness. And it has to do with energies, and I can get into like the entities that become the sickness. It's a whole other universe that people don't believe in, but is very, very real. So the spiritual eye attached to the vortex B has to have its own energy structure, which is different from the vortex A, which is connected to the quantum energy field, in which the mental processes are developed. Due to the high speed of light in our dimension, the quantum wells are the size appropriate to molecules and atoms. And you have to remind yourself that human beings, life itself, trees, the ground, you know, the waters, everything is vibrating in and out of space. Even though we may think it's just pure mass. It is vibrating in and out of space. So the molecules and atoms in hyperspace, where their speed of light is 1 meter per second, the quantum wells are huge and can be manipulated. This manipulation has shown that the quantum wells are in the shape of a cube about a meter on a side. This makes the whole structure about 7 meters tall for a volume of 7 cubic meters. Thus, the mass density, P of hyperspace, is about, and then it gives you the equation, which per unit area is the same value. Therefore, the hyperspace gravitational constant is equal to, and then it gives you the equation, the enormous magnification of the gravitational constant, therefore of the order of, and then it gives you the equation. The question is, how does this amplified gravitational wave created by the rotating propellers and turbines get into hyperspace from our dimension? The answer comes from experiments done using the ancient Chinese form of breathing known as Qi Kung. Using this breathing technique, we have been able to levitate the human body over 6 feet in the air. The internal temperature of the stomach is around 200 degrees Fahrenheit. By simultaneously squeezing the diaphragm to bring hot air up through the lungs and breathing through the nose to bring cold air down, rotating vortices rotating vortices. Hold on, guys. Sorry about that. Um, Rotating vortices are generated in the lung passages when these two air masses meet and twist around each other as depicted in the famous yin and yang diagram. Because the lung has variable diameter passages from the large diameter at the throat to the final small air sacs, there is a spectrum of rotating frequencies. From quantum physics, it is known that if there is a temperature fluctuation occurring among a group of harmonic oscillators in the environment, then Planck's reduced constant is increased by the contingent of the constant times the frequency of the oscillator divided by twice Boltzmann constant times the temperature T. The effort of increasing Planck's constant, referring to figure 6, can be seen in the tetrahedron. Here we go again with the tetrahedron diagram. This diagram, and by the way, if you guys haven't seen my previous live streams regarding uh, the atom, it's like probably like a few years ago. You should check that out. I'll get into it later, but you should check that live stream out. This diagram, of which there are now 4,000 plots, 4,000 plots the natural logarithm of mass on the vertical axis versus the natural logarithm of wavelength on the horizontal axis. In terms of mathematics, it is a subspace logarithmic manifold which projects geometrically the physics constant into our 4D space-time dimension. That is, it is the geometry of the tetrahedron circumscribed by the sphere that determines the mass of the proton and the electron. The mass of the electron times its wavelength is equal to the mass of the proton times its wavelength, which in turn is equal to Planck's constant h divided by the speed of light c. And then it gives you the equation. Taking the natural logarithm of the above equation shows that the mass plus the wavelength is equal to what is termed the base constant, which is represented in figure 6 by the 45-degree line. A from point on the horizontal axis to the vertical axis at point. The electron is located at point, which is the intersection of the electron wavelength with line. The electron wavelength reflects off the sphere at points and returns along line as the electron mass. As shown in the tetrahedron diagram stored in the Library of Congress, the clockwise path of the electron transitions into the counterclockwise path of the proton, showing that the electron and the proton are one and the same particle. Because the electron and the proton travel in opposite directions along the path, they have the same charge but of opposite sign. Our dimension is represented by Planck box, which is bounded by the Planck mass and the Planck wavelength. The Planck mass is equal to the linear mass of the universe times the Planck length, which is the bottom limit of our dimension. The Planck wavelength is 2 times the Planck length. Notice that the electron is located within the Planck box. Referring to figure 7, if there is an increase in Planck's constant due to the temperature fluctuations among the harmonic oscillators, the 45-degree baseline, it moves to the left on the tetrahedron diagram as shown by line F. Because of the increase in the base constant, there is a corresponding increase in the electron mass and the wavelength. The electron moves from point to point, which places it at the edge of the Planck box, which is the boundary between space and hyperspace. At point F, the electron is essentially no longer in our dimension. Referring to figure 8, imagine a box filled with 9 electron oscillators. If Planck's constant is increased near the 3 oscillators in the middle, these electrons will leave the dimension or leave this dimension. This leaves 6 oscillators as shown in the box. However, box C is the equivalent of box D, in which there are still 9 positive mass oscillators together with 3 negative mass oscillators. Thus, there is an accumulation of negative energy when information is lost from the environment to another dimension. And I just want to say to the person that keeps on trying to stop me from talking, oh my God, I know this is bothering you so much. I love it. I am so glad that this is pissing you off. I just want to thank you for giving me the fire to continue to talk about these things, because you have no idea how satisfying this is that you're pissed off. I just want to thank you for the fire you put inside me. I love it. I love it. Okay, let me continue. Dr. Kip Thorne, who co-authored the book Gravitation with Dr. Archibald Wheeler of Princeton University, has shown in a general relativity space-time curvature calculation that negative energy is required to open and stabilize the throat of a wormhole between space and hyperspace. The accumulation of negative energy in the aforementioned example generates wormholes between into hyperspace. So hyperspace has a low energy density because of the reduced speed of light in that dimension. Ordinarily, energy would not flow from hyperspace to space because space has a higher potential than the potential of hyperspace. This, of course, is the reason that the body vortices can flow energy into the energy field of a human being who is located in hyperspace. By creating negative energy, the potential becomes reversed such that low-density hyperspace energy flows into our dimension as seen by the positive head. The low-density energy fills the body, which allows a human being to float upwards like a helium balloon, as verified by Chi Kung, breathing as well as spinning on a motorized platform known as the Chakra Vortex Accelerator. The latter device resulted in the first mechanical means to produce anti-gravity. If you guys saw my live stream where I talked when I talked about it, I had an experience, quote unquote, where my spirit left my body and I traveled to this location that's not here on Earth. Uh, I traveled to a location where there were these other beings in a room, and these other beings had I called it the spiritual machine because it wasn't a real machine, it was energetic. They had a machine and they were surround this field, uh, and they were, I guess they were doing like a meditation. I remember I was looking from the top of the roof, from the ceiling downward towards where the group was. And in the middle, they were in a circular, um, they were surrounding this thing, and in the middle was this what looked to be like an energetic wormhole, but it wasn't a wormhole. It was a different type of portal. Um, and what they were doing is that they closed their eyes. It seemed like they were meditating, and with their hands in unison, they were spinning the energy field. And you can see it. It was like a blue, like a light blue translucent thing. And when they were doing this and they were spinning it and spinning it and spinning with their mind and with I guess they knew how to control energy with their hands. That energy field, the whole room began to, uh, I want to call it break apart, but it wasn't that the room broke apart. It was that everything, all the particles, I guess the electrons, the protons, everything began to separate. Even them, their body, you saw everything separating. And they were showing me, these beings were showing me that that's what they use sometimes to come to people, or to teleport, to appear and disappear. And it blew my mind because I had never seen anything like that. And when I found this particular patent or application for a patent, it brought me back to that experience where I got to see this. And they were explaining, those beings were explaining to me that their belief system, or what they believe, is what we believe here on earth as Buddhism, right? They told me that that was theirs, meaning that's their practice. And they seem to be a lot older than us. So when I'm looking at this patent, it totally makes sense from what I've seen. So then he goes on to say, okay, verified by the Qi Kung breathing as well as spinning on a motorized platform known as the Chakra Vortex Accelerator. The latter device resulted in the first mechanical means to produce anti-gravity. The process of creating spinning thermal fluctuations is the same as found in the hot air vortices created by jet airplanes landing at the airport near the road where the full body teleportation occurred. Large vortices are created over the wing of the airplane at the same time that the turbine engines are spinning hot vortices into relatively cold air. The conditions produced wormholes between space and hyperspace. It takes a twin turboprop airplane landing behind the jet to generate the gravitational wave in the region where the wormholes have formed. The gravitational wave then traverses the wormholes into hyperspace, becoming highly amplified due to the change in linear mass and speed of light. Because the propeller blades are collinear with the road, the gravitational wave travels in the direction along the road where it was encountered by the inventor. From experiments with cavitating bubbles, see patent application, cavitating oil hyperspace energy. So he has another patent. It was found that it is possible to produce a wormhole if the surfaces of the bubble collapse asymmetrically. Asymmetric collapse of a spherical bubble produces enormous spacetime curvature distortions. Asymmetric collapse using a magnetic field to distort the collapse produces, in addition to the same severe spacetime distortions, negative energy as the bubble collapses. Due to some general relativity considerations, The wormhole that is created starts rotating in a manner similar to the beacon light produced by a lighthouse. Referring to figure 9, due to the forward helical motion of the propellers as the airplane crosses the road, the pulsed gravitational wave C is skewed backwards or backward at an angle due to the wormholes created by the presence of thermal vortic- vorticity fluctuations generated by the wing and the turbines of the airplane. This skewed wave moves into hyperspace, where it is highly magnified and detected by the inventor. Referring to top view figure 10, the gravitational wave causes a skewed compression and expansion of the hyperspace quantum wells, which constitute the human energy being. Due to this asymmetric distortion in the XY plane, the quantum wells take the physical body out of the dimension as long as the wave pulse is traveling with the human energy field. Oh my God, this is just blowing my mind right now. Wow. Once the back edge of the gravitational wave moves on past the quantum wells, the body is then brought back into the dimension. Again, this reminds me of the extraterrestrial situation where people talk about the extraterrestrial appear as if walking through a portal and then disappear. They're able to do this at will. Whoa. It is the object of the invention to teleport a human being from one location to another by creating a pulse gravitational wave traveling through hyperspace that asymmetrically compresses and expands the quantum wells of the human energy being. This space-time curvature distortion of the hyperspace quantum wells pulls the body, the physical body, out of the dimension such that the human being is teleported along with the wave. As the pulsed wave moves on past the quantum wells, the human is brought back into the dimension at some distance location. Okay, before I continue, this is also, okay, what he's talking about here is also done by Satanists and by occultists. When they're opening portals for spiritual beings to come through, this is also what the practitioners of whatever, witchcraft or black magic or any type of occultism, or even in the Hinduism or Buddhism, this is what they do. They open up wormholes, portals, other dimensions. This is how they do it, but they do it with like incantations, uh the blood. If they sacrifice an animal or any other things, they can open up a portal. And the humans themselves, while they're doing the incantations, whatever the incantations may be, that itself is opening up the chakras, which is generating a lot of energy. Okay, so where was I? Okay, the hyperspace. Okay, a device that will generate a gravitational wave which can be inserted through the wormhole. Referring to figure 11, a magnetic vortex wormhole generator has already been developed, which generates a wormhole between space and hyperspace, as described in a previous patent application entitled Magnetic Vortex Wormhole Generator. Using this generator, it was found that smoke blown through one side of a coil does not appear on the other side of the cylindrical coil. The smoke flows through the wormhole and appears in a hyperspace codimension. It was this experiment that resulted in making the first contact with the androids. Okay, so he has made contact with extraterrestrials. Very interesting. The smoke flows through the wormhole and appears in a hyperspace codimension. It was this experiment that resulted in making first contact with androids of the gray aliens who told me in a remote viewing session that, quote unquote, we saw you blowing smoke into hyperspace. The wormhole generator consists of two concentric cylindrical coils, one of a larger radius than the other, made of thin transformer iron, which iron laminate wrapped in opposite directions, which one continuous wire driven by a sinusoidal current. The solenoidal coil generates a magnetic field through the laminate. Because the electrical currents flows in the opposite directions at different radii through the two windings, bucking electric fields are created along the certain center line of the generator. These radially offset magnetic fields are bucking electric fields, as shown by a calculation using Einstein's general theory of relativity. They generate both an enormous spiking spacetime curvature and a negative energy at a small radius along the center line where the wormhole is formed. The gravitational wave generator is then coupled to this wormhole generator. Referring to Figure 12, it is known from gravitation physics that injecting an electromagnetic wave into a hollow toroidal waveguide produces a hyperbolic space-time curvature stress. The stress in the plane of the waveguide. The tips of the arrows indicate compression, and the tail of the arrows indicate expansion or stretching of space-time. The reason for this space-time curvature is because the waveguide forces the electromagnetic wave to curve around and travel in a circle. Space-time has to compensate for this toroidal generated stress by creating hyperbolic lines of stress in the inner plane of the toroid so that the overall space-time curvature is zero. For a greater gravitational effect, 3 toroidal waveguides, phased at 120 degrees apart, are used to seal off the curvature. Referring to Figure 13, the 3 toroids create a rotating, twisting, vertical propagating gravitational field through the center line of the toroids, provided that the period of the electromagnetic wave is twice the period of the gravitational wave. This phase relationship is adjusted by selecting the correct radius from the frequency of the monochromatic wave. In order to effectively use this gravitational wave, referring to Figure 14, 3-phase toroidal waveguides are mounted at the top of each of 2 identical square granite obelisks. So now they're talking about the obelisks. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, if you've ever visited. I went to Egypt and I saw the obelisk. It's very strange that the Egyptians, and even in modern times, it's very strange that the Egyptians and many countries around the world have things that are like obelisk erected in the most important areas of the city or in each nation. It has to be generating a lot of energy, these obelisks, because I believe the stones have crystals. Okay, so the 2 obelisks are offset by a short distance between them. As a vertical gravitational wave rotates around along with the vertical axis inside the obelisk, the edges of the square obelisk are compressed and expanded such as to create 2 cylindrical asymmetric gravitational waves which are traveling radially outward. Referring to Figure 15, these waves meet to form a plane gravitational wave which travels down the center line between the 2 obelisks. An image just came to my mind when I just read that part. And it showed me the Masonic lodges, like the picture that I just saw. It showed me the Masonic lodges with the 2 pillars and the ladder in between. Very strange. Okay, so form a plane gravitational wave which travels down the center line between the 2 obelisks. Referring to Figure 16, the full body teleportation system, consist of the twin granite obelisk, on which are mounted near the top of each toroidal waveguides, which produce the pulse gravitational waves that run the length of the obelisk. Because the gravitational wave is rotating inside the obelisk, the granite stone undergoes a very small asymmetrical compression and expansion. A cylindrical gravitational wave propagates out from each obelisk, such that along the center line between the two, there is a plane gravitational wave. This wave enters the wormhole created by the magnetic vortex generator, which is located a short distance from and parallel to the obelisk. The wave is amplified by a factor of almost 10 when it enters the hyperspace code dimension. Then it gives you the drawings, which is the full body teleportation, the gravitational wave generator, uh, the view of the seven vortices of the human energy being, which you guys saw. I just showed you the pictures. Okay, so figure 5, the 7 large quantum wells of the human energy being, the tetrahedron diagram showing Planck's constant and the electron, and then it continues. The obelisks are quarried out of the granite stone and cut with a large diameter diamond saw that is used in highway construction. The beveled piece at the top is cut separately and cemented in a place. A tapered aluminum bracket holds the toroids in place. The electrons from the magnetic vortex generator are similar to that used in a patent application, which I just told you. The electrons or the electronics for the toroidal waveguides is similar or familiar, is the familiar stub and coaxial cable driven by amplifier and pulsed variable frequency generator. It seems like this stuff is easy to make, by the way. A full body teleportation system consisting of generating a pulse gravitational wave, which propagates through a magnetic vortex wormhole generator, and generating a wormhole with a magnetic vortex generator, whereby the pulse gravitational wave traverses through the wormhole and enters into hyperspace, where the wave is enormously magnified due to the lower speed of light in that dimension. The method of the claim, 1, wherein the step of generating the pulse gravitational wave comprises using 2 granite stone obelisks, mounting monochromatic wave toroidal waveguides on top of each obelisk to create a rotating, twisting, propagating gravitational wave through the vertical axis of each obelisk, and creating a cylindrical compression and expansion in each obelisk to produce a plane gravitational wave traveling down the center line between the 2 obelisks. The method of the claim, wherein the step of generating a wormhole into hyperspace comprises. So, what are they doing? They're using 2 concentric cylindrical solenoid coils of different radii. I'm probably saying that wrong, but radii, connected by a single wire wrapped in opposite directions on thin iron transformer laminate, which is generating bucking electric fields down the center line of the vortex generator, which creates a space-time curvature distortion with negative energy in accordance with Einstein's general theory of relativity. A teleportation system comprising of generating a gravitational wave traveling through hyperspace, which interacts with the human energy being and pulling the human energy being and physical body out of the dimension when interacting with the pulse gravitational wave, such that the person is teleported from one location to another through a hyperspace and back again into our 4D space-time dimension. This device is very easy to make, obviously. It is also obvious that this man, the mysterious John St. Clair, has come in contact with other beings from other planets, obviously. He just mentioned it. It is also obvious that these other beings, and there are many, if you listen to, you know, uh, Colonel Philip Corso talking about Roswell and the technology, if you listen to other military personnel going back to the 50s, where they talk about 50 or so species of these beings, different life forms from space. Some of these beings are able to travel through time. It seems like they're able to travel through time with either basic or with just their mind. They're probably able to astral project. They're probably able to open portals and wormholes with their mind. They've obviously, I guess, conquered the ability, or through practice have perfected the ability to use their, I guess, if they must have chakras like we do. They must have perfected the ability to travel from one location to another without any advanced technology. Now, I've talked about my experiences where I had, where I've been in my room and I've been watching, like a movie or a show, and one time I had a being come through the wall. I think this was like not even 4 foot being come through the wall, came through the wall. It looked at me. I looked at it as I was watching TV, and it went back through the wall and left. Now that day I was like, what was the purpose of that? Might have been to check up on me, because I've had these situations where every so often I see these things, amongst other things, spiritual things. I see these other beings, and it seems like they check up on people, or they're maybe curious about people, and they look in. I guess the being wasn't expecting me to be maybe awake, and I was laying in bed, and I looked at it, and I just left. There was another time where I was sleeping and I was woken out of my sleep. And, many of you know these stories. I was sleeping and I was woken out of my sleep by a vibration. My body was coming off the bed, and the vibration was so like strong. And I said at that time, it was like brute. It was so strong. My body came off the bed. My body was vibrating very, not, I don't want to say violently. It was just vibrating. And all I would hear was a boom, boom, boom sound. And as it as I was experiencing that in my sleep, I woke up, and then my body fell down to the bed. And then I look to my right, and I see this holographic screen in the middle of my room. There was a holographic screen, and there were these beings looking like they were in the screen, and they were looking at me, and I could see them it looked like I want to say like not a station. They were in I guess a computer room. They had like like everything was a computer when I was looking at the screen, and they were looking at me, and I was like, okay, like this is weird. And I almost felt like my spirit was coming out of my body at that point. And then there was something else happening, some Satanist trying to like send witchcraft or whatever at the same time. and I see my body separated, and I can see my body, and I can see a wormhole on the top of my head. Like how you see this figure right here. See this figure, this part right here? There was a worm, but it was like, it didn't look like that, obviously. It looked more like a vortex or a wormhole. And I can see in the wormhole, I can see other things, other beings. And then I see the hologram, and I'm telling myself, I'm like, I'm looking at the hologram, and I'm looking at these things looking at me. And they were, I don't know what they were doing. They didn't say anything. Like I didn't hear them say anything to me. And I just told them, listen, I don't want, I said, listen, I don't want to be abducted. Okay. This is what I told them. You can ask me any questions. You can like look in on me, do all that stuff, but don't take me out of my bed and don't take me out of my house. And then the screen like disappeared, and then I woke up because it was, and then I did a video. I think I did a live stream. Yeah, I did a live stream on that as soon as it happened. And then there was another time in the daytime where I was waking up in the morning and I was laying in bed, and then I looked to my left, and this being thing showed up. I looked to my left, and I forgot the whole thing, but I remember looking to my left and I see this being, and they're just looking at me. It was like 3 feet tall, maybe a little bit bigger than 3 feet tall. And it didn't look like the other guys, like the grays or anything. This one looked very skinny, and it had a different color to it. And this being looked at me. I looked at it, and it was trying to tell me something, but I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what it was trying to like imprint in my mind. I couldn't understand what it was saying. And then there was another time where I left my body and I traveled into the spaceship. I left my body and I went to this location in space. And I was in a spaceship, and I was looking outside the window of the spaceship, and I was in the middle of space. And I was telling myself, what am I doing here? This is the thing about leaving your body. If you're meditating, when you leave your body, these are the things that you experience, or when you're going into the REM and you leave your body, this is what you experience. And I remember seeing these little android. So some of these aliens that people say they're aliens, some of them are robots. Actually, they're android. They're like biological technology. These beings were small, white looking, like pale looking, and they were laying down. They had the spaceship. It was a humongous spaceship. It had benches. These plain white, like very round benches, and these beings would lay down, but they weren't sleeping, they were recharging. I remember having that event. And then there was another event where when I left my body and I traveled very far away, and I knew it wasn't in this galaxy, and it was in another some other galaxy, and I was inside a spaceship with these other beings that don't look like the regular grays. These were brown. They had the same, almost same type of look, but they were like dark brown colored. They were thinner, taller. They were like, 5'10" or taller. And these beings were very serious beings. And I remember my spirit was on the top of the spacecraft. The spacecraft was more like a roaming technology planet. Let's just put like a craft that is probably the size of a really large body of, a moon or planet. And the interior of the spacecraft was very or like biological. There was no metal. You couldn't see any metal in the spacecraft. And these beings had cloaks on them. And I don't know how I got there. I think this was one of the times where I was awake, and I don't know, I wasn't meditating. I was just like, when you relax so much that your body leaves, your spirit leaves your body. And I was looking at them, and I remember being scared because I knew that I wasn't supposed to be there and I wasn't supposed to see them, those particular beings. And I remember telling myself, as my spirit is like hovering on top of the ceiling of this spacecraft and watching them, I remember telling myself, you need to get out of here. You're not supposed to be here. They're able to sense spirit or energies that are not their own. And I remember after I said that, I came back to my body. So what I'm saying, folks, um, reality is stranger than fiction. The world is not what you think it is. We're a very special type of creature in the universe. Many people are getting information from other, entities that are, causing them or having them try to create these technologies for us on this planet. As you can see, this individual has a lot of patents. It's very mysterious who this guy is. He has a bunch of them. You can do the research on him. It's John St. Clair or John Quincy St. Clair. Some people are try to look into his lineage. You know, excuse me, and they're saying that he might go back to a clan. His family, his ancestors, go back to a clan in Scotland. And the stuff that he talks about is very interesting. And again, it goes hand in hand with the 0 point energy, the UFO phenomenon, uh, the alien abduction phenomenon, the extraterrestrial phenomenon, the Montauk stories, Al Bielek's stories, Tesla. It's all under that umbrella. And we need to take this stuff seriously because we don't have to be stay in this position that we're in on this planet just because a few ruling families want to keep all their stuff to themselves. If we have the ability to time travel, which we do, if we have the ability to teleport, which we do, uh, this is why the CIA, has these secret programs of remote viewing and all this stuff. There's a reason for it. We need to let all this stuff come out. I believe what they're most afraid of is what they said. I think the CIA recognized and the military recognized that if man understands what we are, what the universe is, and what we're capable of, then the ruling powers of the world will no longer rule. They won't be able to rule over us anymore. And this is the dangerous part that they're afraid of. This is what's dangerous to them. If we figure out that we can manipulate, or how the New Age community says, we can manifest things into being, we can manifest, if we truly understood these practices, then we would be a threat to the power structure that's in place. It's like Neo says in the Matrix, if you free your mind, you can do anything. That's why he was able to fly. There is no boundary basically in the Matrix. You're capable of doing miraculous things or things that seem like impossible. So that's what the military is afraid, that we are able to get to the point where we can astral project, because they have programs where people do this. The military does. Astral project, manipulate energy. They use it for the wrong reasons, obviously. They use it to hurt people, to kill people. This is exactly what witch doctors use and occultists use. They use their psychic energy to hurt others instead of freeing mankind. But anyways, I'm going deep into something that it's another subject. All right, guys, I just wanted to share this with you. Make sure you look into John Quincy St. Clair. I'll read his other patent. He has more patents, but if you want to do the research on your own, go ahead. Very interesting stuff. Read it 2 and 3 and 4 times because I know this is long-winded, uh, verbiage, right? They repeat everything over and over on these patents, so it's like boring. But to me, it's not boring. It's actually very, very interesting. All right, guys. You want to support the channel? The links are in the description. Come back tomorrow with some more boring patents. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Hey, Maven. Have a good night. Bye.